watching, for everyone that will eventually be watching, for everyone that is here. We love all y'all. So last week I said we were going to go into chapter 8, but I decided that because there was a lot more to cover in chapter 7 I didn't get to cover, and I kind of wanted to be able to cover more of it. So I'm deciding to do a part 2 instead, because chapter 7 is actually a lot longer than mostly the chapters in this book in the first place, so there's a lot more to cover in it. So I wanted to go over some other things as well. So last week when we were talking about chapter 7, we were talking about the qualities that makes a good leader and what makes someone not a good leader when it comes to understanding being successful in different fields in life in general and whatnot. And we talked about the causes of failure mainly, and things that you can apply for and understand in a position of leadership. And this week I'm going over what he talks about later in the chapter as well, that causes the 30 major causes of failure in general, not just failure as a leader. Yeah, he has a lot. Yeah, so there's a lot. But he talks about, so we start off in the chapter and he says, how many of these are holding you back? As for everyone that's watching, this is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. This is a biblical perspective. So the third major causes of failure. He says, how many of these are things that are actually holding you back? So life's greatest tragedy consists of men and women who earnestly try and fail. The tragedy lies in the overwhelmingly large majority of people who fail as compared to the few who succeed. And he says he's had the privilege of analyzing several thousand men and women, 98% of whom he classified as failures. There's something radically wrong with a civilization and a system of education which permit 98% of people to go through life as failures. But he's saying he did not write this book for the purpose of moralizing on the rights and the wrongs of the world. That would require a book of hundreds of times the size of this one. He is purely making an analysis based off the work and the reasons that he assumes are reasons for failure. So these principles and these reasons I'm going to go over now. And he says, 1, unfavorable hereditary background. Unfavorable hereditary background. Hereditary background. There is but little, if anything, which can be done for people who are born with a deficiency in brain power, lack of knowledge. This philosophy offers but one method of bridging that weakness, and that is through the aid of having a group sometimes, right? Like we talked about, Henry Ford wasn't the smartest person in the world, but he had an idea, but he had a group of people around him as well, right, who emphasized on this idea. But we have to observe with Prophet, however, that is only one of these 30 causes that are a failure, is the fact that your background, in a sense, is lacking in knowledge and brain power. That can be one of the reasons. But in Philippians 6-7, it says, be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all comprehension, will guard your hearts and your mind in Christ Jesus. So when you are relying on God and letting your heart and your mind rely on Christ, right, this deficiency of brain power will no longer be an issue, because God will give you the knowledge, right? Lack of a well-defined purpose in life. There's no hope of success for a person who does not have a central purpose or definite goal at which to aim. People who he analyzed had no such aim whatsoever. They did not have a central purpose. So perhaps this will be one of the most major causes of your failure, is because, for one, you do not have a very well-defined purpose. You don't have a goal or no reason to push on or nothing else, right? It is super bland. And that's in the next reason it says in failure, lack of ambition to aim above mediocrity. You are here. You're not raising yourself up, right? You're putting yourself at a level that is very mediocre, average. We offer no hope for the person who is indifferent as not to want to get ahead in life and is not willing to pay the price. He's saying someone who does not aim above average will have no hope because they do not aim to go ahead of life. They are just staying where they're at. They don't want to pay the price of taking a risk to become better at something or to learn more or to understand, right? Insufficient education. This is a handicap which may overcome with comparative ease. Experience has proven that the best educated people are often those who are known as self-made or self-educated. It takes more than a college degree to make one a person of education. Any person who is educated is one who has learned to get whatever he wants in life without violating the rights of others. Education consists not so much of knowledge, but of knowledge effectively and persistently applied. It's not that you have the knowledge, it's how you are applying the knowledge with the education that you have or the things that you are learning. Men are paid not merely for what they know, but more particularly for what they do with that which they know. So say if you go to one speaker, right, who's trying to encourage you in one thing, but you notice that the other speaker who may have less people in his meeting is better understanding of what he's speaking of, do you want to pay more money for the person that has less knowledge of the subject you're wanting to learn, or are you going to pay for the person that has more knowledge of the subject you want to learn, right? More often than not, you're going to go for the person that has more knowledge on things because they have a better understanding of what it is you're looking for, right? But those people applied the knowledge that they have persistently. So if you have knowledge in things, right, and you are lacking in education, well, maybe you start to gain some more knowledge and self-educate. The insufficient education is a lack. Wow. That was, thank you, amen. Really tried to hold that back. But lack of education is a huge cause of failure. And that's not, like I said, you don't have to have, even if you have a college degree, it's not going to make you the most educated person in the room. You have to learn on your own sometimes as well. Lack of self-discipline. Discipline comes through self-control. This means that the one must control all negative qualities. Before you can control conditions, you must control yourself. Self-mastery is the hardest job you will ever tackle. If you do not conquer self, you will be conquered by self. You may see at one and same time both you may see at one and the same time both your best friend and your greatest enemy by stepping in front of a mirror. So sometimes some people are very self-depreciative. And you know how hard it is to be around people who are very self-negative on who they are? It's not easy, and it really brings you down as well sometimes, especially when you use a lot of your positive energy to try and be there for that person. All they do is keep spreading negativity in their own life. See, the one thing I've found easier when you are trying to have self-discipline in general, and when you are surrounded by people who may be negative sometimes toward others, but they're super positive on themselves, it's a little bit easier to be more positive to them, to try and help them to be less negative to other people. But when you find people who are very self-deprecating, right, they really hurt themselves a lot, or they're just not very controlling of who they are as a person, seem to not understand what it means to really be more positive in their own life, that really brings you down, because then the more time you're spending with these people trying to bring them up, they're only bringing themselves down. So eventually what to do, it brings you down as well. So now you're down to their negativity level as well, because you think, oh, I can't help nobody because nobody wants to listen to me. It's like, no, they don't want to listen because they can't control. They have no control over themselves yet. There's no reason to surround yourself with understand who they are as a person. Proverbs 13:18 says, poverty and shame will come to him who neglects discipline, but he who regards reproof will be honored. Self-discipline matters. If you can have discipline, you will be honored, right? That's scripturally based too. Poverty and shame will come to those who neglect discipline. If you do not understand discipline or your own self-discipline as well, you will bring shame upon yourself, and that is why it is very hard to break out of those things that you're dealing with, emotions or whatever it might be, even in business as well. If there's certain habits that you've developed in that thing, it's not going to help make it better if you keep thinking the same habit that has already failed is the habit you have to stay with. You have to discipline yourself. Number 6, ill health. No person may enjoy outstanding success without good health. Many of the causes of ill health are subject to mastery and control. These, in the main, are overeating of foods that do not help keep you healthy, wrong habits of thought, giving expression to negativity, self-indulging in negativity, wrong use of or overindulgence in sex. I thought that was kind of interesting because there are some people, they just do it too much and it does not become something that is helpful, right? In a marriage, that is supposed to be something that is pure, right? And if you indulge in it a lot, that's, whatever you want, that's your marriage. Obviously I'm not married, so I don't really have any hearsay in that matter. But but there is overindulgence in it, especially if it is in a wrong situation, like especially if it's not in marriage either. That is not only sinful in its own way, but a huge setback in your own life when you are constantly doing stuff like that without truly being in a relationship with somebody or being married with that person, because then you are self-indulging in not just sex but sin as well. Lack of proper physical exercise and an inadequate supply of fresh air due to improper breathing. So health matters. And it sounds kind of like, oh wow, that's kind of rude saying health, especially since I don't know, some people just aren't necessarily in the most physical best condition or have health issues or whatever the issue is, but God can help you get through these issues. He can heal you, set you free, help you become self-disciplined, and figure out what you got to do to stay maybe a little healthier, because most people you see in a level of success, right, are usually trying to very much take care of their health in whatever way they can. Most people who are in a high level of success are exercising, trying to eat healthier, obviously, right, trying to be more positive about things as well. So you have to, come to understand that health does matter when it comes to success as well. Unfavorable environmental influences during childhood. He says, as the twig is bent, so shall the tree grow. Most people who have criminal tendencies acquire them as a result of bad environment and improper associates during childhood. You have the wrong friends, wrong group, maybe parents who are just horrible. Whatever the case may be, most people that end up in the wrong environment tend to not be very successful either, because they're not able to break out of those environments. They have stayed in it for a long time since childhood, so they're still stuck in it, right? People get involved in gangs and violence and other things at a young age, and so they're grown up in it and they stay in it instead of trying to get out of it, right? And because they stay in it, what happens is they end up going to jail or becoming criminals or much worse, or whatever the case may be, sometimes dying even, right? So because of unfavorable environments, most people in those environments are going to fail because they don't know how to break out of those environments. Procrastination. This is one of the most common causes of failure. Old man procrastination stands within the shadow of every human being, waiting his opportunity to spoil one's chances of success. Most of us go through life as failures because we are waiting for the time to be right, to start doing something worthwhile. But do not wait. The time will never be just right. You have to start where you stand and work with whatever tools you may have at your command, and better tools will be found as you go along. And there are plenty of verses that are backing up procrastination. Proverbs 10:4, lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth. Proverbs 10:5, right after that it says, he who gathers crops in summer is a prudent son, but he who sleeps during harvest is a disgraceful son. Proverbs 12:11 says, those who work their hand will have abundant food, but those who chase fantasies have no sense. Proverbs 12:24 says, diligent hands will rule, but laziness ends in forced labor. And it goes on. Proverbs talks a lot about laziness. There's so many verses in Proverbs on laziness, it's crazy. Proverbs 19:15 says, laziness brings on deep sleep, and shiftless go hungry. Proverbs 14:23 says, all hard work brings a profit, but mere talk leads only to poverty. This is all based on laziness, Procrastination. The more you procrastinate, the more you're going to fail. You're not going to get anything done. You cannot procrastinate. And I could probably read 20 more verses on procrastination, but obviously I'm not going to read 20 more verses right now, but I think the verses I gave are a pretty good example. Procrastination is huge. It is a big problem to failure, because when you procrastinate, you never get anything done. Lack of persistence. Most of us are good starters, but poor finishers at everything. Moreover, people are prone to give up at the first sign of defeat, and there is no substitute for persistence. The person who makes persistence his watchword discovers that old man failure finally becomes tired and makes a departure. So failure cannot cope with persistence. If you are failing, you have to figure out another way to start something again. You have to start anew. Remember how we said when something fails, I think we read it earlier in the book. I can't remember exactly which chapter. But when something fails, right, you don't keep going with the failure. You completely restart, right? Start afresh. Again, renew it. So like this, just like this is saying, failure will not cope with persistence. Do not stay persistent in the thing that you failed already. Restart it completely. And then be persistent in the thing that you restarted. Negative personality. Huge, in my opinion. I may not say that's one of the bigger, he doesn't say it's one of the bigger things, but personally I believe it is huge. When you are negative and you surround yourself with negativity, there's nothing that you can do to become better as a person until you leave that negativity, until you are no longer involved with that person, maybe specifically, or those people specifically. There's no hope of success for the person who repels people through a negative personality. That could do that as well. When you are negative because other people have made you negative, you are going to repel people of positive nature who know for a fact they don't want to be around that. People with success will not usually put themselves around people who are negative, because it will bring them down and most oftentimes make them fail. Success comes through the application of power, and power is attained through the cooperative effort of other people, so a negative personality will not induce cooperation. Lack of controlled sexual urge. Sex energy is the most powerful of all the stimuli, is what he says, which move people into action, because it is the most powerful of the emotions. It must be controlled through multiple ways, not just biblically, but also through whatever platform you may have in any way whatsoever. You have to stay away from watching things that are purposely sexual. There are so many movies out there that are very, they have that innuendo on purpose of sexual immorality, just because, like, even though it may not show anything, there may not be any nudity or legitimate stuff that in those movies, the joke is still very much implied. And when the joke is implied, what does that usually do? It makes the person watching the movie think about what that joke actually implies, so then they think about it, right? So then the urge, the wonder, and the curiosity to imagine what that situation would be like starts to form, so it becomes hard to break out of that. So you have to be very understanding of not just through letting God help you push past that lust. You have to ask God to help you control it, not just push past it. I think one of the biggest issues that the church has is that when they talk about lust in general, they try to say that, hey, you got to, be able to work through it. You don't just work through it. You have to understand what it means to control that urge with God, not just work through the urge with God. God has to control it with you, and you have to work through it. There's not just one matter. You take the first step, right, which is controlling your environment and the things you watch, and then you'll be able to work through what you're doing. So you have to take the first step. But without the first step, you won't be able to work through it. You have to take control first. Uncontrolled desire for something for nothing. Gambling. The gambling instinct drives millions of people to failure. And evidence of this may be found in the study of the Wall Street crash of '29, during which millions of people, I think some people remember this, and some people watching as well. I loved history in high school. So, this is one of the things we studied, and I thought it was one of the cooler things, because this is a huge example of why I'm very much against gambling as well. Millions of people try to make money by gambling on the stock margins, and you remember what happens? Millions of people lost money. They actually didn't get nothing from it. It was huge, the major crash. People lost tons of money trying to bet on these gamble on this stuff, and they ended up not getting much back from it because it actually ended in failure. So you have to be careful, right? Money is not something you want to be desirable for only. Money is good, but you have to use money for the right reasons, not just for selfish desire. Lack of well-defined power of decision. Men who succeed reach decisions promptly and change them, if at all, very slowly. Men who fail reach decisions, if at all, very slowly and change them frequently and quickly. Indecision and procrastination are twin brothers. Where one is found, the other may usually be found also. Kill off this pair before they completely hog-tie you to the treadmill of failure. Indecision and procrastination, he says, are twins. That is very true. What usually happens? I know a lot of people have been through this situation, but okay, let's say you go to hang out with a friend, right? You ask your friend, hey, what would you want to do? And they're like, I don't know. And you're like, well, I'm not really sure either. So then what do you end up doing? You sit around for minutes, hours even sometimes. Sometimes you end up just sitting around just staring, especially nowadays. Some kids are just sitting around staring at their phone for an hour and a half while their friends are just sitting there, not really sure what they want to do either. That's why I hate that. My friends and I were like, hey, you want to do something? Like, well, we're not sure. So I'm like, cool, we're doing this then. They're like, oh. I'm like, yep. They're like, oh, we're doing it. And then we're about to do it. Then they're like, no, wait, let's do this instead. And I'm like, cool. So someone made a suggestion. Okay, so we're doing this. Usually, if you are decisive, it will strike other people to be decisive as well, because in that moment, they don't want to be the one who's going to be indecisive, and they don't want to be the one procrastinating the decision, right? Yeah. You have to be the leading example in whatever friend group or thing you are in, because if you can be decisive and make a decision, other people will see that, so that they will be more decisive as well. One of the reasons that he talks about failure is also something we're going to talk about later in the chapter. But he talks about one or more of the 6 basic fears, which we haven't talked about just yet. But when we do get to that, I will come back to this specific reason of failure to explain it better. But we're not to that point just yet. Number 15 says wrong selection of a mate in marriage. He says this is one of the major causes of failure, is the wrong person in marriage. The relationship in marriage brings people intimately into contact. Unless this relationship is harmonious, failure is likely to follow. So moreover, it will be a form of failure that is marked by misery, unhappiness, and destroying all signs of ambition. When you have the wrong partner, what usually tends to happen, you will come into major depression with different things. Your emotions will be compromised. You'll be hurt. You end up getting stressed out more often than not because your partner stresses you out more often than not. And this shows even in dating as well. And people that are just in normal relationships who aren't even married, when they aren't compatible and things are not working, things do not seem to want to go the way you want it to go. There are people that think they can control so many different things. And when that happens as well, that also tends to be a huge problem, failure, because for one, like you said, it's not harmonious. There's no real love. You become there's misery involved. You become happy, sad about this, the most simple things, because so many things are just bringing you stress and anxiety and impatience, dysfunctionality in that relationship, whatever it might be, because it's not working. You found someone that's not compatible with who you are. And so you're going to lack in all signs of ambition, like he said. Number 16, overcaution. There's nothing wrong with being cautious, but overcautious is not a good thing. A person who takes no chances generally has to take whatever is left when others are through choosing. So the indecisive factor is there again. So the person who takes no chances generally has to take whatever is left when others are done choosing. So overcaution is as bad as undercaution. Both are extremes to be guarded against. Life itself is filled with the element of chance. So you have to remember, even if you are undercautious, you don't care at all, people will tend to use that. But if you are overcautious, you will not be able to grab the things that everyone else is already trying to reach for in that level of success, right? Because you are overcautious about it now. So you don't want to not care about what people are doing, but you also don't want to overcare about what's going on around you either. But you still have to be decisive in your decision and trust in God as well, right? Yes, ask God and pray to God, God, give me the wisdom to make the right and decisive decision without worrying, right? Without worrying and understanding of the knowledge that you've given me. So do not be overcautious. Wrong selection of associates in business. This is one of the most common causes of failure in business. In marketing personal services, one should use great care to select an employer who will be an inspiration and he who is himself intelligent and successful. Same thing with church, though. When you are, right, involved in church in whatever way, or the leader of the church, people around you who are not going to be inspiring, who aren't going to be able to step into leadership, who you can't train, who can't listen, who aren't going to allow themselves to be disciplined, to understand what is being taught to them, who think that they are better than the person that is in charge, will not help that church grow in any way. So you have to surround yourself with the right people, right? The right people who you're going to put in the place of leadership. You need to be the right people. You can't put the wrong people in business or in church in a place where they can influence other people. Superstition and prejudice. Superstition is a form of fear. It is also a sign of ignorance. Men who succeed keep open minds and are afraid of nothing. They're not worried about superstition. Everyone's probably heard that, if you step on a crack, you'll break your mom's back. You know how many cracks I've stepped on and my mom is still fine? It's one of the stupidest superstitious things I've ever heard in my life. You know what I mean? Like, they talk about all these different little kids. Like, when you're growing up through school, they have all these different little superstitious things. Like, if you do this, this could happen. Or if you do this, this could happen. And I've done all of it on purpose just to see if it would happen, because it makes no sense to me. And nothing ever happened. Nothing ever happened because it's just superstition. It's none of it's just. You have to be open-minded and not afraid. Wrong selection of a vocation. No man can succeed in a line of endeavor which he does not like. If you do not like what you're doing, then you're not going to succeed. The most essential step in the marketing of personal services is that of selecting an occupation in which you can throw yourself wholeheartedly. If you do not truly believe what you are working on, that is the wrong place to be. Lack of concentration of effort. The jack of all trades seldom is good at any, but concentrate all your efforts on one definite thing. One definite chief aim is how he puts it. When you concentrate your efforts on one, you could know a lot of things. That's not a problem. You could have common knowledge of how to do a lot of different things. But if you are really good at one certain thing, more people will acknowledge you for that thing that you are good at, because that is the goal that you have, is that one certain thing. The habit of indiscriminate spending. People do this a lot. They'll spend money randomly on things they truly, honestly do not need. The spendthrift cannot succeed, mainly because he stands eternally in fear of poverty. Form the habit of systematic saving by putting aside a definite percentage of your income. Money in the bank gives one very safe foundation of courage when bargaining for the sale of personal services. Without money, one must take what one is offered and be glad to get it. So you must be wise in how you spend your money, or you'll just fail, because you won't have the money to what? Into investing it into something properly that can help you succeed, because you won't have it. You spent it stupidly on a $300 whatever that had no real reason or nothing. It wouldn't help you, right? Lack of enthusiasm. Without enthusiasm, one cannot be convincing. Moreover, enthusiasm is contagious, and the person who has it under control is generally welcome in any group of people. When you have enthusiasm, right, people are like, wow, I love your positive vibe, right? That's what a lot of people around my age are saying. I love the vibe, right? When you have enthusiasm, people love the energy you bring, so they will what? Bring you into their group because they love that you are enthusiastic. Your enthusiasm becomes contagious. So do not lack of enthusiasm, right? Be courageous, be enthusiastic, enjoy things, let God bring you that joy, right? And tolerance. The person with a closed mind on any subject seldom gets ahead. Intolerance means that one has stopped acquiring knowledge. The most damaging forms of intolerance are those connected with religious, racial, and political differences of opinion. Intemperance. The most damaging forms of intemperance are connected with eating, strong drink, and sexual activity. Overindulgence in any of these things is fatal to you succeeding. So everyone that is out there drinking all the time and getting pitch black drunk just because they think it's fun, clearly isn't going to get anywhere. Unless they're super lucky, and I guess the media loves watching famous people get drunk all the time because for whatever reason that's cool to them. But if we're talking about true success where you're actually happy, not depressed like half of them are, then you don't want to be overindulging and eating too much food, drinking so much, or being extremely sexually active in a sinful way in any way. Inability to cooperate with others. More people lose their positions and their big opportunities in life because of this fault than for all other reasons combined. It is a fault which no well-informed businessman or leader will tolerate. If you are in a work environment in any way, or church, like I just said a moment ago, and you cannot cooperate with the people around you, you are clearly not going to get anywhere because the cooperation is not there. Lack of communication, lack of cooperation are one of the big major causes of why most workplaces tend to not be enjoyable or they do not do well. Possession of power that was not acquired through self-effort. Sons and daughters of wealthy men, others who inherit money which they did not earn. Power in the hands of one who did not acquire it gradually is often fatal to success. Quick riches are more dangerous than poverty. I don't know if you've noticed a common trend when it comes to social media, but most kids who end up inheriting their parents' money and don't know what to do with it tend to completely spend it gambling on something or spending money on stupid cars or this or houses or other random things. And what tends to happen is you end up seeing those people working a common job because they lost all their money. Most kids who inherit money from their parents who have no knowledge of how to handle money or handle business are brats. I'm just throwing out that they're straight brats. If you are someone who gets spoiled constantly by someone who has money, you are probably going to be a brat about it because you do not understand what it means to actually work for what the things that they have, right? Parents who have money who help their kids understand how to put in effort for that money and to keep the business going. When the kids inherit it after, what happens? Usually the business gets more successful because the kid not only has the knowledge of his parents, but now is able to acquire more knowledge through learning for himself as well with what he is learning. But parents who do not do that, who do not teach their kids to understand what it means to work hard, and the kids purposely realize that they can do whatever they want because their daddy's got money, right? And they act that way as well. You see that throughout, in high school even. You see plenty of kids who, they're like, oh yeah, my parents, they got money. This is so good. And it's like, that's cool and all. Like, do you know how to work for yourself though? Like, do you know how to put in effort? That's one of the things that I noticed, that some of the kids who have money when I was in high school, like some of the parents that had money when I was in high school, those kids never put any effort in the student council stuff that I did. Like when we had student council meetings and other things like that, I realized the very kids who did less work were the very kids whose parents also had lots of money. They were very lazy. So possession of power that was not acquired through self-effort tends to be one of the bigger failures, because people who just they don't put in the effort, they don't understand what it means to put in work, they're spoiled. Intentional dishonesty. There is no substitute for honesty. One may be temporarily dishonest by force of circumstances over which one has no control without permanent damage, but there is no hope for the person who is dishonest by choice. By choice. Sooner or later, his deeds will catch up to him, and he will pay by loss of reputation and perhaps even loss of liberty. Honest by choice, dishonest by choice. He's saying that when you are intentionally dishonest, you are going to fail, because you are, like you said, sometimes you're dishonest because of the circumstance. You're like, oh shoot, like it wasn't me. Like, because you're just kind of like, you don't want to get in trouble for something or whatever the case may be, right? But he's saying when you are choosing to purposely be dishonest in front of people, especially in business, you're going to fail, because nobody's going to find you credible, right? They will tell others, hey, Daniel is not a very honest person by choice. He lies to people often because he chooses to. Of course, no one's going to want to listen or do business with me, because now the rumor has spread that I am dishonest by choice. So even if that's not true, someone thought it was true, and now someone has said something. And the only way to fix that is to be honest, right? You have to be honest with people. You have to be honest with yourself. You have to be honest to God. Egotism and vanity. These qualities serve as red lights which warn others to keep away. They are fatal to success. Having a big ego is very bad. When you are extremely egotistical, right, and you are very vain about things, and you think that you are above and beyond everyone else because you're just so much better. Like I said, kids, like we said, kids that end up getting money from their parents tend to be more brats. So what happens? Their ego is super high because, oh, my parents have money. I can get this. They got me this car. I have that. I have that. And it's like, that's cool. That's cool. That's cool. You're a horrible person. You are bragging about something that you have no honor for or had no effort in doing in the first place. So just like that, when people are put in a place where they can be egotistical, of course they're going to fail because they have no sense of honor. They do not honor anyone. They do not honor themselves or God. So because they have no honor for others, of course they're going to fail because their ego is just too high and they think they're better. Right? John Maxwell had, in one of his books that we talked about a long time ago, he says, you don't want to be the smartest person in the room, because when you are, you don't learn anything.
Yeah, that's right.
So when you end up being the most smart person in the room, of course your ego is going to be super high because you're the best. So if you want to learn to have honor for someone, purposely put yourself in a place where nobody, right? Or everyone, in a sense, or nobody is less than you. You want people above and beyond your position, because when you seek people who are in a higher place, you will learn more, and your ego is definitely not going to be up anymore, because there's no way. You're going to realize, okay, yeah, I'm definitely not as successful as this person. They definitely know more than I do, right? And when you can honor the fact that someone may know more than you, you will be able to succeed in whatever you're doing, because you have honor for the people that are above you. Ego is no longer taking control. Number 29, guessing instead of thinking. Most people are too indifferent or lazy to acquire facts with which to think accurately. They prefer to act on opinions created by guesswork or snap judgments. Social media is all about that. Opinionated news, right? A lot of social media is very false, because a lot of it does not come from legitimate, reliable sources. I don't know if you've ever seen like rumors of famous people, right? Come up on social media. Oh, so and so was cheating on this person, blah 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 blah. And you see all the news, and you're like, oh my God, is that true? Right? But then when you find out about certain things, especially people that are close to them, they're like, why are they spreading these lies about you? They don't actually know anything because they don't know you. They have no idea who you are, understanding of what it is or what you're doing, right? So when you make guesswork and you have opinions of things that you have no idea about, do not think you are right. It just makes you look stupid. And it also makes you look very rude in a lot of different situations. There are plenty of people, especially when it comes to different levels of science and history and other things of knowledge throughout life in general, right? They think they know something based off an opinion that someone else stated around them. So then they're like, oh, well, this is probably right, right? Like there's plenty of scientific research that backs a certain fact, but then you're stating your opinion because you think I think this is true. This has to be more true over this. And we have plenty of that in this generation right now. So many people in this day and age currently are always stating their opinions and understanding and blah, 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 or how they feel about this or feel about that. It's like, who cares? Like, whether or not you feel that way, is it fact? Of course, no, it's not fact. You have to look up what it is that you're trying to understand to get fact behind what it is you're going to understand. Don't just state your opinion, because obviously if you're stating just your opinion and you have no fact to back your opinion, you're going to look very uneducated, and it's not going to help you in business either. You don't want to make opinionated guesses in business, because when you make an opinionated guess on whatever business that you are involved in, more likely than not, you're going to mess something up, right? Whether it be some number counting or whatever it might be, or you're looking through money and you're just like, well, I assume that's $1,000, right? So then you go ahead, you try to purchase whatever it is you're trying to purchase with $1,000, but then they count it. Hey, this is only $850. You're $150 short. Oh no, I'm sure it was $1,000. I looked at it and I took, I assumed that it was, but it's not fact though. You gave me $850. So if you're going to figure out what it is you have, you must what? You must count through it first and look into what it is you are trying to find, so that you understand what it is you're looking for is facts, not just opinionated guesses or snap judgments like he says. Most of the world is revolved around this opinionated stuff nowadays. We have too many opinions on different subjects without really looking into it and without actually coming to the knowledge of understanding what it is that we're trying to look into, right? 30, lack of capital. This is a common cause of failure among those who start out in business for the first time without sufficient reserve capital to absorb the shock of their mistakes and to carry them over until they have established a reputation. So this is also saving up money, right? When you have money saved up and you have things in reserve for when you may mess up stuff, then you will be okay. But when you have nothing in reserve and you are wasting your money and not making the best decisions, of course you are going to lose whatever business that you are involved in, right? So under this, all the things that I have said, if there are any particular causes of failure from which you have suffered that are still being included in everything that I talked about just now, pray. Get into the Word and pray and ask God to help you to understand which one of these things that I have talked about right now that will help you get past this, because you don't want, especially if right now, for everyone that is watching, if you are trying to start a business or you're involved in business right now but things are not going that great, or even in church, if you are a church leader and something is wrong, or maybe you see some levels of things that just aren't going great, I want you to truly look through some of these failures that I mentioned and think, is some of this infecting me? Is some of this my fault? Or maybe do I have people around me that aren't cooperative, or whatever the case may be? Or maybe you've been dishonest to people, or whatever it might be. Out of these things I mentioned, get into the Word, pray, come to ask God to understand, right? You have to take inventory of yourself, right? I'm going to go through some questions real fast. Some things you want to look into to self-analyze what's going on through your personal self as well, to really think about the questions and the things that I mentioned, which are the 30 failures that are major cause to not being able to succeed. 1, have I attained the goal which I established as my objective for this year? 2, have I delivered service of the best possible quality of which I was capable of doing? 3, have I delivered service in the greatest possible quantity which I'm capable of doing? 4, has the spirit of my conduct been harmonious and cooperative at all times? 5, have I permitted the habit of procrastination to decrease my efficiency, and if so, to what extent? 6, have I improved my personality, and if so, in what ways? 7, have I been persistent in following my plans through completion? 8, have I reached decisions promptly and definitively on all occasions? 9, have I permitted any or more of the 6 basic fears to decrease my efficiency? And like I said, when we get later in the chapter and we get back, I'll come back to these 6 fears so that we can reiterate it better. 10, have I either been overcautious or undercautious? 11, has my relationship with the associates and work been pleasant or unpleasant? If it has been unpleasant, has the fault been partly me or wholly mine? Number 12, have I dissipated any of my energy through lack of concentration? 13, have I been open-minded and tolerant in connection with all subjects? 14 says, in what way have I improved my ability to render service? Have I been intemperate in any of my habits? Have I expressed, either openly or secretly, any form of egotism? Have my conduct toward my associates been such that it has induced them to respect me? Have my opinions and decisions been based upon guesswork or accuracy? Have I followed the habit of budgeting my time, my expenses, and my income, and have I been conservative in these things? How much time have I devoted to unprofitable effort which I might have used to better advantage? How may I rebudget my time and change my habits so I will be more efficient during this coming year? Have I been guilty of any conduct which was not approved by my conscience? In what ways have I rendered more service and better service than what I was paid to render? Have I been unfair to anyone, and if so, in what way? If I had been the purchaser of my service for the year, would I be satisfied with the thing that I purchased? Am I in the right vocation, and if not, why not? Has the purchaser of my services been satisfied with the service I have rendered, and if not, why not? What is my present rating on the fundamental principles of success? So, make this rating fairly and frankly, he says, and if checked by someone who's courageous enough to do it accurately. So these are questions that I'm asking. So after we went through the 30 things that are the major causes of failure, I don't really have time to reiterate all of those questions, but for everyone that is watching, and obviously everyone here, if you want to re-go through those things, I want you to look through that yourself so that you can kind of ask yourself, okay, like, what about this? What about that? Am I making the best decisions? Am I doing this? Am I doing this right? How can I make this better? How can I make this better? I'm already doing this good. Awesome. Next one, right? Just kind of work through the questions and ask yourself these things, because this will definitely help you to better understand where it is in your business, especially, or in church, or even in your personal life. So, I'm going to go ahead and pray. God, thank you for everyone that's watching, everyone that's here, Lord. I pray that as we're ending off this chapter, that these reasons of failure that we have talked about, I pray that no one is going through these things. But if they are going through these reasons of failure, and that is why that they are failing, I pray that they go through the questions to come to understand what it is that maybe they are messing up in, so that they can become better at who they are through you, Lord, and through themselves as well, and for others. I pray that their business becomes more successful than it is now when they ask themselves these questions and when they come to understand what it is that you want them to do, Lord. And I pray that if they are a leader in their church, that they become more advent in what they are doing, become better in how they are leading, and become stronger in you as well, Lord. to be an influence to the world, not just in their church. In the name of Jesus, amen. Now I'll be doing chapter 8 next week.